Have you ever wondered if the future is already written, waiting to be glimpsed by those with special powers? Across time and cultures, stories of second sight and prevision have captured the imagination of humanity. Prophets, seers, and wise men have long reported visions of the future, often predicting remarkable events with astonishing clarity. But how is this possible? Can the human mind really perceive events yet to unfold, or is it simply a heightened sense of intuition? In this lesson, we explore the fascinating world of future-time clairvoyance, second sight, and prevision. By examining well-documented cases from history, we'll uncover how individuals across the world have peered into the mysterious regions of the future. From ancient prophecies to modern-day psychic phenomena, we'll explore the science, theories, and experiences behind these uncanny abilities. Stay tuned as we investigate how second sight has shaped both belief systems and our understanding of time itself. Join us as we delve into incredible stories of premonitions that have saved lives, altered futures, and revealed truths long before their time.
Lesson 13. Second sight, prevision, etc. Notwithstanding the difficulties in the way of an intelligent explanation of the phenomena of future-time clairvoyance, second sight, prevision, etc., of which I have spoken in the preceding lesson, the human race has always had a lively reminder of the existence of such phenomena, and the records of the race have always contained many instances of the manifestation thereof. Among all peoples, in all lands, in all times, there have been noted remarkable instances of the power of certain persons to peer into and correctly report from the mysterious regions of the future, passing from the traditional reports of the race and the minor instances known to almost every person. We find that the scientific investigators of psychic phenomena have gathered together an enormous array of well-authenticated cases of this class. The reports of the Society for Psychical Research contain hundreds of such cases, which the student may read and study with interest and profit. It is not my intention to present a full history of the reports of this character. Rather, I shall call your attention to a few striking cases in order to illustrate the phenomenon clearly and forcibly. There is such a wealth of material of this kind that it embarrasses one who wishes to select from it. However, I shall do the best I can in that direction. Following, to commence with, I give you extracts from a well-known case reported by a prominent member of the Theosophical Society, which has attracted much attention. It was related to this person by one of the actors in the scene. It happened in India. A party of English army officers was entering a dense jungle. Then follows the story as below. We plunged into the jungle and had walked on for about an hour without much success when Cameron, who happened to be next to me, stopped suddenly, turned pale as death, and, pointing straight before him, cried in accents of horror, See, merciful heavens, look there where, what is it?" we all shouted confusedly as we rushed up to him and looked around in expectation of encountering a tiger, a cobra, we hardly knew what, but assuredly something terrible, since it had been sufficient to cause such evident emotion in our usually self-contained comrade. But neither tiger nor cobra was visible, nothing but Cameron pointing with ghastly, haggard face and starting eyeballs at something we could not see. Cameron, cried I, seizing his arm, for heaven's sake speak. What is the matter? Scarcely were the words out of my mouth when a low but very peculiar sound struck upon my ear, and Cameron, dropping his pointing hand, said in a hoarse, strained voice, "There, you heard it? Thank God it's over," and fell to the ground insensible. There was a momentary confusion while we unfastened his collar, and I dashed in his face some water which I fortunately had in my flask, while another tried to pour brandy between his clenched teeth, and under cover of it I whispered to the man next to me, one of our greatest skeptics, by the way, Beauchamp. "Did you hear anything? Why?" "Yes," he replied. "A curious sound, very. A sort of crash or rattle far away in the distance, yet very distinct if the thing were not utterly impossible. I could have sworn that it was the rattle of musketry, just my impression," murmured I, "but hush, he is recovering." In a minute or two he was able to speak feebly, and began to thank us and apologize for giving trouble, and soon he sat up, leaning against a tree, and in a firm, though low voice said, "My dear friends, I feel that I owe you an explanation of my extraordinary behavior. It is an explanation that I would fain avoid giving, but it must come some time, and so may as well be given now. You may perhaps have noticed that when during our voyage you all joined in scoffing at dreams, portents, and visions, I invariably avoided giving any opinion on the subject. I did so because while I had no desire to court ridicule or provoke discussion, I was unable to agree with you, knowing only too well from my own dread experience that the world which men agree to call that of the supernatural is just as real as, nay, perhaps even more real than, this world we see about us. In other words, I, like many of my countrymen, am cursed with the gift of second sight, that awful faculty which foretells in vision calamities that are shortly to occur. Such a vision I had just now, and its exceptional horror moved me as you have seen. I saw before me a corpse, not that of one who has died a peaceful, natural death, but that of the victim of some terrible accident, a ghastly, shapeless mass with a face swollen, crushed, unrecognizable. I saw this dreadful object placed in a coffin and the funeral service performed over it. I saw the burial ground, I saw the clergyman, and though I had never seen either before, I can picture both perfectly in my mind's eye now I saw you. Myself, Beosham, all of us and many more. Standing round as mourners, I saw the soldiers raise their muskets. After the service was over, I heard the volley they fired. And then I knew no more. As he spoke of that volley of musketry, I glanced across with a shudder at Beosham, and the look of stony horror on that handsome skeptic's face was not to be forgotten. Omitting the somewhat long recital of events which followed, I would say that later in the same day the party of young officers and soldiers discovered the body of their commanding officer in the shocking condition so vividly and graphically described by young Cameron. The story proceeds as follows. When, on the following evening, we arrived at our destination and our melancholy deposition had been taken down by the proper authorities, Cameron and I went out for a quiet walk, to endeavor with the assistance of the soothing influence of nature to shake off something of the gloom which paralyzed our spirits. Suddenly he clutched my arm, and, pointing through some rude railings, said in a trembling voice, "Yes, there it is. That is the burial ground of yesterday." And when later on we were introduced to the chaplain of the post, I noticed, though my friends did not, the irrepressible shudder with which Cameron took his hand, and I knew that he had recognized the clergyman of his vision. The story concludes with the statement that in all the little details, as well as the main points, the scene at the burial of the commanding officer corresponded exactly with the vision of Cameron. This story brings out the fact that the Scotch people are especially given to manifestations of second sight, particularly the Highlanders or mountain people of that land. It is hard to find a Scotchman who, in his heart, does not believe in second sight, and who has not known of some well-authenticated instance of its manifestation. In other lands, certain races or sub-races seem to be specially favored or cursed, as Cameron asserted, with this power. It will be noticed, usually, that such people dwell, or have dwelt in the highlands or mountains of their country. There seems to be something in the mountains and hills which tends to develop and encourage this power in those dwelling among them. The story is also remarkable in the fact that the impression was so strong in the mind of Cameron that it actually communicated itself by clairaudience to those near Picard, though not without correspondence in other cases. Otherwise, the case is merely a typical one, and may be duplicated in the experience of thousands of other men and women. George Fox, the pioneer Quaker, had this faculty well developed, and numerous instances of its manifestation by him are recorded. For instance, he foretold the death of Cromwell. When he met him ridings at Hampton Court, he said that he felt a waft of death around and about Cromwell, and Cromwell died shortly afterwards. Fox also publicly foretold the dissolution of the Rump Parliament of England, the restoration of Charles II, and the Great Fire of London. These are historical facts, remember. For that matter, history contains many instances of this kind. The prophecy of Caesar's death, and its further prevision by his wife, for instance. The Bible prophecies and predictions, major and minor, give us semi-historical instances. A celebrated historical instance of remarkable second sight and prevision is that of Cazot, whose wonderful prediction and its literal fulfillment are matters of French history. Dumas has woven the fact into one of his stories, in a dramatic manner, but even so he does not make the tale any more wonderful than the bare facts. Here is the recital of the case by La Harpe, the French writer, who was a personal witness of the occurrence, and whose testimony was corroborated by many others who were present at the time. La Harpe says, "It appears as but yesterday, and yet, nevertheless, it was at the beginning of the year 1788. We were dining with one of our brethren at the Academy, a man of considerable wealth and genius. The conversation became serious. Much admiration was expressed on the revolution in thought which Voltaire had effected, and it was agreed that it was his first claim to the reputation he enjoyed. We concluded that the revolution must soon be consummated, that it was indispensable that superstition and fanaticism should give way to philosophy, and we began to calculate the probability of the period when this should be, and which of the present company should live to see it. The oldest complained that they could scarcely flatter themselves with the hope. The younger rejoiced that they might entertain this very probable expectation, and they congratulated the Academy especially for having prepared this great work, and for having been the rallying point, the center, and the prime mover of the liberty of thought. One only of the guests had not taken part in all the joyousness of this conversation, and had even gently and cheerfully checked our splendid enthusiasm. This was Cazot, an amiable and original man, but unhappily infatuated with the reveries of the Illuminati. He spoke, and with the most serious tone, saying, 'Gentlemen, be satisfied. You will all see this great and sublime revolution, which you so much desire. You know that I am a little inclined to prophecy. I repeat, you will see it.' He was answered by the common rejoinder. One need not be a conjurer to see that he answered, 'Be it so.' But perhaps one must be a little more than conjurer for what remains for me to tell you. Do you know what will be the consequences of this revolution? What will be the consequence to all of you? And what will be the immediate result, the well-established effect, the thoroughly recognized consequences to all of you who are here present?" Said Condorcet, with his insolent and half-suppressed smile. "Let us hear. A philosopher is not sorry to encounter a prophet." "Let us hear," Cazot replied. "You, Monsieur de Condorcet, you will yield up your last breath on the floor of a dungeon. You will die from poison which you will have taken in order to escape from execution. From poison which the happiness of that time will oblige you to carry about your person. You, Monsieur de Chamfort, you will open your veins with 22 cuts of a razor, and yet will not die till some months afterward. These personages looked at each other and laughed again. Cazot continued, you, Monsieur Vic d'Azyr, you will not open your own veins, but you will cause yourself to be bled 6 times in one day, during a paroxysm of the gout, in order to make more sure of your end, and you will die in the night. Cazot went on, you, Monsieur de Nicolai, you will die on the scaffold, you, Monsieur Bailey, on the scaffold, you, Monsieur de Malesherbes, on the scaffold. Ah, God be thanked, exclaimed Rocher, and what have I, Cazot, replied, you. You also will die on the scaffold, yes, replied Chamfort. But when will all this happen, Cazot answered. 6 years will not pass over, before all that I have said to you shall be accomplished. Here I, La Harpe, spoke, saying, here are some astonishing miracles. But you have not included me in your list, Cazot answered me, saying, but you will be there, as an equally extraordinary miracle. You will then be a Christian. Vehement exclamations on all sides followed this startling assertion. Ah, said Chamfort, I am comforted if we shall perish only when La Harpe shall be a Christian. We are immortal. Then observed Madame la Duchesse de Gramont, as for that, we women, we are happy to be counted for nothing in these revolutions. When I say for nothing, it is not that we do not always mix ourselves up with them a little, but it is a received maxim that they take no notice of us, and of our sex. Your sex, lady, said Cazot. Your sex will not protect you this time, and you had far better meddle with nothing, for you will be treated entirely as men, without any difference whatever. But what? Then, are you really telling us of Monsieur Cazot? You are preaching to us the end of the world. I know nothing on that subject, but what I do know is that you, Madame la Duchesse, will be conducted to the scaffold, you, and many other ladies with you, in the cart of the executioner, and with your hands tied behind your backs. Ah, I hope that in that case, I shall at least have a carriage hung in black. No, Madame, higher ladies than yourself will go, like you, in the common car, with their hands tied behind them. Higher ladies. What? The princesses of the blood? Yea, and still more exalted personages, replied Cazot. Here a sensible emotion pervaded the whole company, and the countenance of the host was dark and lowering. They began to feel that the joke was becoming too serious. Madame de Gramont, in order to dissipate the cloud, took no notice of the reply, and contented herself with saying in a careless tone, you see, that he will not leave me even a confessor. No, Madame, replied Cazot, you will not have one, neither you, nor any one besides. The last victim to whom this favor will be afforded will be. Here he stopped for a moment. Well, who then will be the happy mortal to whom this prerogative will be given? Cazot replied, it is the only one which he will have then retained, and that will be the King of France. This last startling prediction caused the company to disband in something like terror and dismay, for the mere mention of such thing was akin to treason. The amazing sequel to this strange story is that within the 6 years allotted by the prophecy, every detail thereof was verified absolutely. The facts are known to all students of the French Revolution, and may be verified by reference to any history of that terrible period. To appreciate the startling nature of the prophecy when made, one needs but to be acquainted with the position and characteristics of the persons whose destinies were foretold. This celebrated instance of highly advanced future-time clairvoyance, or prevision, has never been equaled. The reason, perhaps, is that Cazot indeed was an advanced and highly developed occultist. The account mentions this, you will notice. This class of persons very seldom prophesy in this way, for reasons known to all occultists. The ordinary cases recorded are those in which the manifestation is that of a person of lesser powers and less perfect development. Advanced occultists know the danger of a careless use of this power. They know that omitting other and very important reasons, such revelations would work a terrible effect upon the minds of persons not sufficiently well balanced to stand the disclosure. Moreover, they know that if the average person knew the principal details of his future life on earth, then he would lose all interest in it. It would become stale, and would lose the attraction of the unknown. In such a case, the pleasant things to come would lose their attractiveness by reason of having been dwelt on so long that their flavor was lost, and the unpleasant things would become unbearable by reason of the continual anticipation of them. We are apt to discount our pleasures by dwelling too much upon them in anticipation, and, as we all know, the dread of a coming evil often is worse than the thing itself. We suffer 1,000 pangs in anticipation to one in reality. But as I have intimated, there are other, and still more serious reasons why the advanced occultists do not indulge in public prophecies of this kind. It is probable that Cazot decided to, and was permitted to, make his celebrated prophecy for some important occult reason of which La Harpe had no knowledge. It doubtless was a part of the working out of some great plan, and it may have accomplished results undreamed of by us. At any rate, it was something very much out of the ordinary, even in the case of advanced occultists and masters of esoteric knowledge. Another case which has a historic value is the well-known case concerning the assassination of Spencer Perceval, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, in England, which occurred in the lobby of the House of Commons. The persons who have a knowledge of the case report that some 9 days before the tragic occurrence, a Cornish mine manager named John Williams had a vision 3 times and saw, in which he saw a small man, dressed in a blue coat and white waistcoat, enter the lobby of the House of Commons, whereupon another man, dressed in a snuff-colored coat, stepped forward, and, drawing a pistol from an inside pocket, fired at and shot the small man, the bullet lodging in the left breast. In the vision, Williams turned and asked some bystander the name of the victim. The bystander replied that the stricken man was Mr. Spencer Perceval, the Chancellor of the Spanish, the Chancellor of the Exchequer. The valuable feature of the case, from a scientific standpoint, lies in the fact that Williams was very much impressed by his thrice-repeated vision and was greatly disturbed thereby. His anxiety was so great that he spoke of the matter to several friends and asked them whether it would not be well for him to go to London for the purpose of warning Mr. Percival. His friends ridiculed the whole matter and persuaded him to give up the idea of visiting London for the purpose named. Those who had a knowledge of the vision were greatly startled and shocked when several days afterward the assassination occurred, agreeing in perfect detail with the vision of the Cornishman. The case, vouched for as it was by a number of reliable persons who had been consulted by Williams, attracted much attention at the time, and has since passed into the history of remarkable instances of prevision. In some cases, however, the prevision seems to come as a warning, and in many cases the heeding of the warning has prevented the unpleasant features from materializing as seen in the vision. Up to the point of the action upon the warning, the occurrence agree perfectly with the vision, but the moment the warned person acts so as to prevent the occurrence, the whole train of circumstances is broken. There is an occult explanation of this, but it is too technical to mention at this place. What is known to psychic researchers as the Hannah Green case is of this character. This story, briefly, is that Hannah Green, a housekeeper of Oxfordshire, dreamt that she, having been left alone in the house of a Sunday evening, heard a knock at the door. Opening the door, she found a tramp who tried to force his way into the house. She struggled to prevent his entrance, but he struck her with a bludgeon and rendered her insensible, whereupon he entered the house and robbed it. She related the vision to her friends, but as nothing happened for some time, the matter almost passed from her mind. But some 7 years afterward, she was left in charge of the house on a certain Sunday evening. During the evening, she was startled by a sudden knock at the door, and her former vision was recalled to her memory quite vividly. She refused to go to the door, remembering the warning, but instead went up to a landing on the stair and looked out the window. She saw at the door the very tramp whom she had seen in the vision some 7 years before, armed with a bludgeon and striving to force an entrance into the house. She took steps to frighten away the rascal, and she was saved from the unpleasant conclusion of her vision. Many similar cases are recorded. In some cases, persons have been warned by symbols of various kinds or else have had prevision in the same way. For instance, many cases are known in which the vision is that of the undertaker's wagon standing before the door of the person who dies some time afterward, or the person is visioned clad in a shroud. The variations of this class are innumerable. Speak to the average dweller in the Highlands of Scotland or certain counties in Ireland. Regarding this, you will be furnished with a wealth of illustrations and examples. This phase of the general subject of clairvoyance is very fascinating to the student and investigator, and is one in which the highest psychic or astral powers of sensing are called into play. In fact, as I have said, there is here a reflection of something very much higher than the astral or psychic planes of being. The student catches a glimpse of regions infinitely higher and grander. He begins to realize at least something of the existence of that universal consciousness in which we live and move and have our being, and of the reality of the eternal now, in which past, present, and future are blended as one fact of infinite consciousness. He sees the signboard pointing to marvelous truths.
Thank you so much for watching today's lesson on second sight and prevision. What do you think about the idea of glimpsing future events? Have you ever experienced something that felt like a premonition or vision? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next fascinating lesson. Lesson 14, Astral Body Traveling. We'll be diving deep into the mysteries of astral projection and exploring the differences between astral visioning and astral body travel. You won't want to miss it. See you next time.